I'm Sue Meggers, and I teach at Truro, Iowa. Today we're going to talk about plant nutrient deficiency, and we're going to be using examples of things we grow here in Iowa. What do we have, Maddie?
Corn.
So tell me about those ears of corn.
These two are way more full and bigger, and this one is not near as full and it's way smaller.
What do you think we're lacking here?
Nutrients.
Nutrients? Well, we're also going to talk about another important nutrient that's even important for humans, calcium. And we're going to talk about those with some peas.
Now, let's head into Miss Meggers' classroom.
Today we're going to be studying plant nutrient deficiencies using Nourishing the Planet in the 21st Century from Nutrients for Life. And we're going to think a little bit about, first of all, how do plants get nutrients? Students, what do you think?
Plants get nutrients in the water through the roots from the soil.
Oh, very good. So it travels up through the roots with the water. It's dissolved in the water, you think? Okay. Then it moves up through the xylem, the tissue, and carries it up to the leaves, where then it can do what process?
Photosynthesis.
Good. Photosynthesis, yep. And if it's got all the nutrients it needs, then it can do well. So plants and animal cells need nutrients, and those nutrients help us build strong bodies, strong bones, strong teeth. What happens if you don't have enough nutrients?
We are more susceptible to diseases.
Oh, more susceptible to disease. So we can be way more susceptible to disease, and we can have problems with how our body functions, right? So what are some signs that you don't have enough nutrients? If we looked at you, what would be some things that you could tell maybe you don't get enough nutrients?
Your hair.
Your hair? Okay. Maybe how fast your fingernails grow? Yes. Okay, those are very true. So I want you to think for a moment and come up with a few ways you could tell if a plant is nutrient deficient.
Take a moment and come up with a few ways you think you might be able to tell if a plant is nutrient deficient.
So we're talking about plants. So what are some ways that you could tell, or signals that plants give us that maybe they don't have enough nutrients?
Their leaves may turn yellow or brown.
Okay, yellow or brown leaves. Okay, another way.
They may look wilted or falling over.
Okay, they may be wilted. Do you have any more? Okay, well today we're going to learn a little bit more about those, and we're going to think about it. We live here in Iowa and we produce corn. And what do you notice about these ears of corn?
The tops.
The tops, some are bigger and some are more filled out. So could this be due to a lack of nutrients?
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to explore that today, and you're going to do a case study called Humanity Against Hunger. So if you would open up that tab in your computer, and we'll get ready to get started. All right, so as I said, we're going to do Humanity Against Hunger, which is a case study. So what I want you to do is click on the food crisis in Africa, and we're going to read a little bit about that problem. You're going to be investigators that try to investigate and help these farmers solve their problem. All right, so go ahead and we'll read this out loud. In sub-Saharan Africa, nearly 1/3 of the population, almost 200 million people, lack enough food to lead healthy, productive lives. Maddie, would you read the next paragraph, please?
One of the major reasons is a serious depletion of nutrients in the soil. African farmers have traditionally cleared land, grown a few crops, and then moved on to clear new land, leaving the old land bare, hoping that it will regain its fertility. But population growth, among the world's highest now, forces farmers to grow crop after crop on the same land, mining or depleting nutrients from the soil, while giving nothing back to bring marginal land into production.
A complicated dilemma with no single solution. While many African farmers understand the need to repair the soil, there are many factors that make it difficult for them to obtain the resources they need, such as the availability of soil nutrients, lack of money to buy those nutrients, little education on proper use of nutrient supplements. All of these factors are intertwined, making the catastrophic hunger issue in Africa a complex dilemma with no single solution.
So 75% of African land is degraded. That means it's not farmable. So what are some of the environmental concerns with that, Maddie?
Human hunger is not the only casualty of this crisis, as 75% of farmland in sub-Saharan Africa is now plagued by severe degradation. This soil nutrient depletion, combined with population growth, also leads to environmental concerns, as African farmers often abandon infertile fields and clear forests for cultivation, threatening the continent's endangered wildlife and forests.
So did you know that soil erosion and nutrient loss continue at this rate, that the crop yields in Africa will reduce up to 30% within the next 15 years? We've got to solve this problem. We've got to help them. Do you think you're up to the challenge?
I'm all for it.
All right, thank you. So, Maddie, since you're all gung-ho and you're ready to go with this, what we're going to do is you're going to click on the keys, and you are going to start with your partner, and you're going to investigate this dilemma deeper. You're going to find out what the root cause of problems are for these lack of production, and you're going to suggest to these farmers what they need to do to make their crops grow better. I'll check back with you in a little bit to see how you get along, all right?
All right.
At this time, pause the video and use the link your teacher provided, or Google Humanity Against Hunger and play the Nutrients for Life game. After you play, resume the video and review the case studies with Maddie and Miss Meggers.
All right, so we had this first one, Makina, I guess. And what was the problem with his corn?
His leaves were turning yellow.
Oh, so what do you think was wrong? What was missing?
I think he may have had a nitrogen deficiency because of how much rain they had. It may have washed the nitrogen out of the soil.
Oh, all right. So then we're going to continue. We'll talk about the other ones. Next, we had case study 2. So here we have case study 2, and this was Temu, and she's got heavily compacted soil, and what else was about her leaves? Do you remember?
They were purple leaves.
Oh, purple. Wow, that's crazy. So what was going on? What was your diagnosis here?
She had a phosphorus deficiency, possibly because the phosphorus was too compact in the soil, so the plant roots couldn't reach it.
Okay, yeah. And it's possible there's a deficiency anyway in the soil. So we're at the third case study, and this case study shows us what with the plants?
They are dying from the ground up, and their leaves are turning yellowish.
So what else do we know about this site?
So these plants have sandy soil.
Okay, so what problem could that arise if we've got a nutrient issue?
Sandy soil doesn't hold nutrients very well, so there could possibly be a potassium deficiency since it doesn't stay.
Oh, okay. Thanks. So now we've gone through all 3 case studies. What advice would you have for these farmers?
I suggest that they need more nutrients for their soil, and these nutrients can consist of potassium, phosphorus, and nitrogen. These nutrients may not be super available to them either, so they could also use compost or other things to help replenish their plants.
Okay. So if they have livestock, is there anything they can use from their livestock to help them?
Manure.
Oh, okay. So that might help a lot, with especially nitrogen.
Right.
Okay. How are they going to make sure they don't put on too much fertilizer? What can they do to help give them information?
So these farmers can get a soil test where they can test their soil and see what their plants are lacking and what they need.
Okay. And you know, in a place like this, maybe they don't have access to soil tests, but with the knowledge that you've given them about what the signs are of different deficiencies, whether it be the yellowing leaves in nitrogen, the purpling or darkening leaves in phosphorus, or the dying from the ground up and wilting with potassium, especially in sandy soil where we don't hold much water. Those are some really good ideas. Okay, so do you feel confident in your ability to maybe diagnose some more deficiencies, say with our pea plants outside?
Yes, I feel a lot better.
Speaking of pea plants, let's take a look at the calcium experiment they conducted.
So we're back today. We're going to talk about our experiment that we've been doing for a few weeks here about our peas. And we're going to look at nutrients. So just to refresh, we talked about nutrients that we need to grow corn. And those big 3 are nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. But we could see that our corn samples aren't equal. What do you know about maybe this corn sample compared to these? That could be a problem.
That it might be lacking phosphorus or potassium.
That's a possibility. How we would find out with the corn itself, rather than looking just at the size and that, we could also do something called a tissue analysis. And we could measure the amount of potassium and phosphorus to see if that truthfully was what was wrong with that corn. As we looked at the peas, we started our peas off. They all looked pretty. They were all growing kind of like this. And then after they got to be about 5 to 7 meters, we started kind of changing their watering technique here a little bit. because we want to look at the secondary macronutrients that we need. Those include calcium, magnesium, and sulfur, but particularly we're looking at calcium because the product that we use called EDTA, when you mix that in a solution with sodium hydroxide and get a basic solution, it actually keeps the calcium locked up. So the peas are not able to get that calcium. Well, when that happens, it changes their growth structure. We go from having these really nice, healthy looking peas to sort of these sickly, spindly looking things to we had some that died. And I just didn't have room here to bring those today. So the ones that died, we used a 25 millimeter solution of EDTA, and then we had a 5 mm solution of EDTA, and we put that in this one. So you could see it definitely affected their ability to grow. What do you notice about these compared to the other plants?
That they might be lacking nitrogen?
They could be, but do peas need nitrogen?
No, they do not.
Oh, because they work with what in the soil, do you remember?
Bacteria.
Bacteria, yeah. So, going back to our chart, maybe they're lacking this other one.
Calcium.
Calcium, sure. And so what do you notice about the leaves? What's different about the leaves in the plants?
There isn't as many of them, and they're not as full.
Not as full, definitely kind of spindly, sickly looking. So these plants were watered with regular tap water, and they've done pretty well. So this kind of shows us that when we're thinking about nutrients, we can't just focus on the big three, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. We also have to focus on those other ones because these nutrients, like calcium, help the other nutrients do their jobs better.
Michelle Tickles is a senior permitting specialist at Mosaic. Let's hear about her career.
Hi, students and teachers. So nice to see you. And my guest today is Michelle Tickles with the Mosaic Company. Michelle, would you please tell our students about your title and a little bit about the Mosaic Company?
Hello, everyone. My name is Michelle Tickles, and I'm a senior permitting specialist with Mosaic. The Mosaic Company is the world's largest producer of potash and phosphates, which obviously are two vital plant nutrients. And I specifically work in the minerals section where we mine for phosphate. As far as my job is to apply for and receive all of the permits that we need from either the local county level, the state, in our case, the Florida Department of Environmental Protection level, or the federal level from the Army Corps of Engineers, because primarily where we're mining, it includes wetlands and other natural resources. We need to make sure that we're protecting those natural resources and, again, conducting all the required regulatory requirements that we have to do after we're done mining. So that's what a permitting specialist does.
Oh, Michelle, thank you. We appreciate that. Tell us a little bit about your education and your background, how you got into this career.
Absolutely. So I grew up in a very rural county in Central Florida and enjoyed the outdoors, enjoyed hiking, enjoyed interacting with wildlife. And so ultimately, when I went to college after high school, I studied biology. So I have an undergrad, a bachelor's degree in biology. And then I continued on in that path and received my master's in environmental science and policy from USF after that. I began my career actually regulating phosphate mining right after college. I started to work for the Florida Department of Environmental Protection, and that gave me a great foundation to later move into the private sector to actually work for a phosphate mine, to know, again, all the legal requirements, and it had also given me that background of knowing the why and the how and the best practices moving forward.
Well, you seem to love your job very much. What do you love most about your job?
The best part of my job is using the mining and reclamation opportunity to recreate historic habitat. So, for example, a stream that may have been ditched in the 40s or a upland forest that may have been cleared during the turpentine years. So through the mining and reclamation process, we have to reclaim after we're finished mining, and we can decide where we're putting some of these features. And so that's my favorite part, is that you can return something that was functioning and providing habitat or water quality benefits back in the 1920s. You can put it back in 2020 and have it benefit wildlife, water quality, flood protection, all of those components.
Oh, that is exciting. I would love that part too. But it sounds like it could be a little challenging too. So, what's the most challenging thing about your job?
The most challenging thing for my job is trying to align multiple groups internally to accomplish these permit applications. So the regulations don't only require information in regards to wildlife and wetlands, it also requires information as to the engineering and design plans, the water treatment that we are going to have as far as maintaining flood control, making sure we're not impacting neighbors. And then they want to know what our mine plan is, what the duration is going to be, how long are we going to be out there mining, and when do we think we can come back after mining and reclaim, and how much time will that take? And so that involves multiple individuals. I don't have all that information on my own, obviously. So getting all of those departments together and having them align and meet our timelines just to make sure we all work towards that common goal of beginning a mine and continuing in a mine, that's probably the most challenging, but also the overcoming misconceptions about the process of mining and reclamation and the quality of our reclamation. There's a lot of misinformation out there that may be in regards to other practices, things that have occurred prior to regulations. And so again, we're thankful for groups like Nutrients for Life because of their contributions towards public education and sharing the story of ag and how we fit into that. So yeah, that's another challenge that we've done really well to overcome.
Oh, well, thank you for sharing that. So, can you share with us maybe a fun fact about your job, something that other people may not really think about?
So fun fact is that there are actual areas that were mined for phosphate that are now state parks and hiking trails. So again, I mentioned phosphate mining is a very unique industry in that when we're done mining, we are required to replace the wetlands acre for acre, type for type. We also replace maybe former ditched areas with upland forest or other components. So there is not a permanent transformation to a phosphate mine. It's just temporary. So you could be out at a state park in Central Florida that was mined in 1970, and where you're standing admiring an alligator, sunbathing could have been, for a short period of time, a 40 to 60 foot hole in the ground during phosphate mining. So that's a really, I think, interesting fact about how our land can ultimately be used for recreation. Also, obviously, other uses such as building a Walmart or residential development. I mean, it basically becomes like any other piece of property, but it's fun when you're out there looking and knowing what it was 40 years ago.
Well, Michelle, I personally had that experience by going to Hardy Lakes. And I could not get over how beautiful and pristine everything was. And to know that that was once an area that had been mined. I just thought it really was hard to wrap my mind around just how gorgeous it is today.
Right. And that's my ultimate goal with a biologist background. I love to see the line between a preservation area that wasn't mined and an area that's been mined and reclaimed. As those trees start to get older and they catch up with the height of the preservation trees, I love to watch that line basically disappear where you're not really sure where mining took place historically. That's the ultimate goal, to establish corridors and return the land back to the original use, or habitat use, or some other type of use.
Well, I have to say, in that facility, you've done a beautiful job, because it would be very hard to tell as it is so pretty. So with your career, can you kind of explain to our students how it connects with agriculture, the environment, and also with the fertilizer industry? How do these three things work together?
Absolutely. So all levels of government, the state, federal, and local level of government, they acknowledge the need for a domestic fertilizer supply, obviously to make it more cost effective for farmers that need those vital nutrients for crop development. And so that is one focus that we emphasize when we're making these permit applications. when we're asking to do that temporary disturbance, we may also have to facilitate wildlife relocations and things such as that. But again, the public need for a reliable domestic supply of fertilizer is very important. So again, the agencies all recognize that when we're doing these permit applications, that is the need that we have to impact these areas. The second aspect is, again, providing employment at a local level, not necessarily at the farming level, but at the fertilizer manufacturing level or the mining level of mining of the ore that will then be provided for fertilizer manufacturing. So those two components, we're basically the very beginning of the supply chain of, at the very end, when you're getting corn delivered to a grocery store or something along those lines. I mean, if you rewind all the way back, it starts with a field visit into an open area with a drill boring just to see what that layer of phosphate ore looks like, the matrix looks like, to then decide whether or not it's feasible to mine it and that we can continue providing this reliable source to North America from a domestic standpoint. It's hard to be competitive. We do have competitors in other countries that do not have the environmental requirements that we do, but obviously we are not only trying to provide a service to future customers from a fertilizer standpoint, we want to make sure we're doing it in a sustainable way. So these regulations assist us in maintaining, being environmental stewards, having sustainable best management practices on site that minimizes or eliminates any pollution attempt. And that goes through all facets of our operations.
Absolutely. Oh, well said. Thank you. All right. One last question. Do you have any advice that you could give to our students that are listening?
I would say when you're moving forward with deciding a major or an area of study, to be open-minded and flexible. I have a biology background, but I work with a bunch of engineers. So, I mean, to work at a mine, you don't necessarily have to have a geology degree or an engineering degree. If you have a diverse background as far as looking into biology, but also looking at regulations, looking at the laws that apply to resource development, that can help you have a great foundation that you can fit in at an industrial operation of a company, or again, on the maintenance side or the operations side out in the field. So that flexibility, just be open to that when you're looking at an area of study. And it's good to have a broader area of study so that you don't somehow specialize yourself to where you don't perhaps fit in because you're super specialized. So I think that that's what's helped me over time, is being flexible and having a diverse set of background knowledge. It's helped me to fit in places that you rarely see a biologist, perhaps, especially on the mining operations side. There, like I said, I'm surrounded by engineers, which isn't a bad thing. I can talk about the wetland plants and wildlife, and then they can talk about the hydrology and the water flow. So it's a great combination of attributes in order to get, again, that final goal of the fertilizer manufacturing component.
Michelle, I cannot thank you enough. This has been fabulous. And just to have a time for you to take the time to spend talking to our students and our teachers, we deeply appreciate it. And just thank you. Thank you so much.
No problem. I appreciate the opportunity.